Uh, Good evening. My name is James K. Holder II. Some of you may know me as Sir James II, and I'd like to welcome you to Not on My Watch Live. If you are watching, I would like you to join me every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Eastern Standard Time. And I would also ask you to right now subscribe, like, comment, and share. I want you to retweet this and repeat this. The goal with coming live is just to make it more interactive, make it a little bit more connected. I think that many of you know me from Twitter, at JKH2, and that gives you an opportunity to see a little bit of my personality, but I think with this, I want to be able to come more frequently and in a more prepared state. So if you're watching, today it is Wednesday, August 16th, 2017. And we had one hell of a weekend in the United States of America. I will say that I was very much focused on other projects, and quite frankly, I'm just tired. I'm just tired of engaging in sort of the same conversation over and over again. Of course, what I'm talking about is the white supremacist melee in Charlottesville, Virginia. Now, Charlottesville, for those who know, is basically the adoptive home or vacation home of Thomas Jefferson. So it really is a haven for white supremacy and racism. I mean, and if you don't understand why Thomas Jefferson is a bigot and a racist, then I would suggest that you don't know history very well. So we must sort of recognize, one, that Charlottesville is prime for something like that to happen. It is a place that historically has had roots in white supremacy, similar to places like Stone Mountain, Georgia, where the Klan was founded, and you have Confederate generals carved across the Stone Mountain, so in Georgia. And so we really have to be, at some point, this type of thing shouldn't shock us anymore. It should not shock us that people out there are ignorant. They are willing to carry on these hideous traditions of just white supremacy and just evil. There's really no other way to phrase it. It is evil in America. And so what I want to do today, I had a couple threads out on Twitter, and it was more just from a place of, why don't our allies treat us like they would want to be treated? Like, there were so many people sharing content that was offensive. So many people promoting the visuals. And for me, the reason why people march and protest is to show something. They want to show that they're there. They want to express it. And my thing is, Charlottesville is a pretty remote place. So going to those rallies and making it viral and talking about it on the news, yes, it is informing people, but it's also giving them what they want. It's giving them the attention that they want. So why was the mainstream media so focused on these activities? Why were people who were in the area so determined to share all of what was going on? And I just think it's unfortunate that was what the weekend turned into. I mean, we had known that this rally was going to happen, and frankly, I just completely checked out. I did not watch anything that happened. I did not watch the endless commentary on how horrible this is, and how horrible it is that Trump hasn't denounced it, and how horrible it is that when Trump denounced it, it took him 4 days. No one cares whether he denounced it or not, because the thing is, we know how this man acts, we know how this man thinks. He is not against white supremacy. He knows that he needed that sort of Nazi radicalized base in order to become president. So it's not really about whether Donald Trump denounces it, if he denounces something quickly enough. And we really have to stop making it about that. Because at the end of the day, the conversations that we're having, yes, we want to keep bringing in Hillary Clinton and say that Hillary Clinton warned us all. We want to keep saying, oh, this wouldn't have happened if it weren't for Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders saying, don't talk about identity politics. But at the end of the day, neither of these three people, nor Barack Obama, invented racism. Racism has been with us since certain groups in society decided they needed to have dominion and rule over others in order to exist. That they can't just simply be or coexist. They have to rule. They have to be in charge. And it's sad that we are still dealing with this now, but it doesn't surprise me. It really never surprises me. So after lots of conversations this weekend, even though I consider myself disengaged from the whole thing, there were many conversations, and many of them ultimately focused on, I think it all came back to the allies, right? The white allies, effectively, because there were many black people out there, counter-protesters, the alt-left, according to Donald Trump. And there were many people who contributed to a resistance against the demonstrations, the hate mob with tiki torches. But at the end of the day, I feel like what was the motivation there? And what is the takeaway? Are you going out here because you believe the marching and the torches are wrong? Are you going out here because you believe white supremacy as a whole is wrong? Because those are two different things. And what I would say is that there's two ways to look at this whole thing. The main thing for me is, are you calling out this stuff before it becomes an issue? And to me, if you're not, then you're really not being an ally, because you're being negligent. You're falling asleep at the wheel. We have seen all building up through the election. We've seen this every election, but this time we saw the Nazism. We saw all of the Klan activity. We saw all of the abuse at Donald Trump's rallies. We saw all of this stuff happening, and I don't know if it was just people who are sensitive to it, people who look like me, who noticed this and then ultimately decided that they were going to work hard and actively fight against it, because it seems like many now are pretending that they didn't see these things coming. And so my thing is, if you put the small fire out, if you put the little, spark out first, if you properly douse your cigarette before you throw it out the window, you won't start a forest fire. And we have to be mindful of those little sparks. We have to be able to know when something's going to spiral out of control. And racism is just one of those things that always spirals out of control. It always leads to death, just like it did this weekend. It always consumes with hate and leaves everyone diminished. I mean, no one gains anything by it. White people can claim that there's some benefit or some advantage from being racist or from there being a system of racism, but it doesn't add any value to our country. It doesn't advance us. And so we have to decide what we want. A lot of people were chanting and coming up with these different slogans, and I'm like, it's really not about the slogans. It really is about doing the work day in, day out, being committed and taking the action to work against white supremacy all of the time. And, oh my God. I also realized I'm not wearing my watch. What kind of live show is this? And I actually meant to put that on, so I'm going to grab that because it's important. I am missing my watch. Yeah, if I don't find it in a second, I'm just going to keep moving. That's strange. I always keep it in the same place. Well, the show must go on. This is actually a very important episode, so we're just going to proceed with a different watch. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is, after on Twitter, the whole conversation kept coming back to, okay, well, what do I do? What do I do? Everyone was asking, what can they do to help solve the problem? What can they do to make sure that their family members are not a part of this, or that they are contributing to a solution. And so that's what I've outlined, just a few basic key steps here in order to make that process go better. How to openly discuss racism with your bigoted family members? That is the question. And I think the first thing you have to do is you have to commit to the idea. You have to determine within yourself what type of person you are going to be, what type of society you want to contribute to. And you have to be dedicated to that. You know, fighting against racism and white supremacy, because it's so ubiquitous, because it's everywhere, it's in everything, you have to be very determined. And it is difficult. You know, when you're black, you obviously are more sensitive to it in some ways. And so it's easier to sort of acknowledge that it is there and that it is a problem and how it can be a problem. But if you're not, it may be harder for you to recognize it. So in addition to committing to being a part of the change, in addition to determining that you within yourself are not going to be a part of the problem, you're going to be a part of the solution all of the time, you do have to recognize that you only have control over yourself. So, you know, I'm not saying that you should blame your family members or blame, people, we bring up this whole, well, some people bring up the whole not all white people response. That's the rebuttal to, racism oftentimes. That people are saying, they don't want to be lumped in with everybody. But at the end of the day, if you find yourself in a system that you are benefiting from passively by not rejecting it, you are a part of the problem. So unless you're actively working against racism, you, I would say, are in the area of concern, where we need to be working on you and helping you to get to where you need to be so that we can coexist peacefully. I think while you can only control yourself, I don't think that should be your excuse, because despite the fact that it's just you do have a sphere of influence. Everybody does. And whether you believe it or not, there are people in your family, people in your life, people in your community that are looking at what you're doing. And it might be, at home, it might be online, it might be on Twitter, it might be on Facebook, Instagram, it could be at work. And even strangers are looking, we look to each other as a society to gauge reactions to certain cues. The way you react to something is important, and it suggests to others how they should comport themselves oftentimes. But I think what we have now is this sort of automatic queued up response, this shock value to racism, this idea that, oh my God, racism, that's like the worst thing. It is the worst thing. But the reactions are now so knee-jerk, they're so perfunctory, that we're really not gaining any traction on actually teaching people how to recognize racism as it exists, determine how it's becoming a problem to people who are impacted by it, and also assessing when it leads to problems for others. Because a lot of times you don't want to acknowledge that racism impacts you as a white person, but this weekend in Charlottesville, you saw it, And I use the example of Charleston. When Dylan Roof went in as a lone person, it was very easy to say that he was just crazy, he needs help. Many people deflected to that same excuse. And so when Charlottesville happened, no, this was a bunch of children. These are college students, many of whom who are part of the college Republicans. One day I'll tell you about my experience with those thugs at Georgia Tech. They were a nightmare. They were really horrible people, and they still are. And sometimes people don't change, but some people can. And if they're not going to change, we need to be able to move them somewhere. Like they need to be in a particular club somewhere, or like they need to be somewhere on their own. Like they need their own island or something. Because it's too much to deal with at this point. But many people were injured, many people were hurt, and a lot of them were white, And it didn't need to be that way. The problem with that expression of hate, everyone knew what it was going to bubble over into: violence. And it's so unnecessary because nothing was communicated, nothing was gained. So I want to, one, tell you to, the first thing you need to do is commit. Commit to being an example for the people in your sphere of influence. You have to do that. You have to do that all the time. And it's not just, oh, I'm going to talk about racism when it's convenient. I'm going to talk about it when something happens. I'm going to talk about it during an election. You have to be committed to doing it all the time, or else it doesn't work. Because people are always going to judge you by your darkest moment. They're never going to look back and say, oh, she was this great champion for racism. Not if you, if at any point you had a weakness, they're going to take it away from you and pretend that that was not, good. And actually, I'm going to adjust the camera. Well, yeah, I'm going to try to adjust the camera. I think it's a little far. Forgive me, because, again, all of this is a new format. Yeah, I think that's better. So, the second thing you must do, and we all must do this, is learn to recognize racism. I think, we've had conversations before about what racism is, how do you define it, but I think definitions oftentimes miss the point, because, okay, this is askew. Definitions oftentimes miss the point because you can now have someone who basically fits into a very specific or very narrow scope of what something is racist is, and it's never almost going to tell the whole story. So I want to just sort of make a separate definition or an assessment so that you can determine whether something's bad or not. And I would say just ask yourself, does this idea, statement, action, or policy exist to create an exclusive set of opportunities, privileges, and or advantages for white people? If it does, then it's white supremacy. It doesn't have to be violent to be white supremacy. It doesn't have to be a law per se. It can be as simple as a conversation, as a thought. Because if you're putting ideas out there that get people to be supportive of anything, that means you're going to create a barrier. You're going to use public resources to create a barrier to block out some of the public because they are of color or they are a woman. And really, this policy could apply to anything. If does it create an exclusive set of opportunities, privileges, and or advantages for straight people? I mean, obviously, a ban on gay marriage is bigoted. It's bigotry. It is to suppress people in that group. And so we have to be sensitive to that, and on any scale. It doesn't always have to be as blatant as a Klan march, whether it's with tiki torches or white sheets. It doesn't matter what how it's materialized. The idea there was hatred. It was fueled by hatred and this really ignorance. So you have to learn how to recognize something that's racism before you're able to really be able to actively fight against it, right? I think that's the important number two. The number three is that you have to reject it. And you have to reject it every single time. And there's different ways that you can reject something, but ultimately, the definition of reject is, and I hate definitions, we just talked about this, but to refuse to have, take, recognize, etc. So you refuse to take any part of it. You refuse to have any part of something that is racist. And I think you have to be able to be that person at a party. If you're at a party and somebody shows up at a Halloween party, Halloween's right around the corner. If you're at a Halloween party and somebody shows up dressed in blackface, you gotta let them know that that's not okay. I mean, don't laugh at it. You gotta look them dead in their eye and just say, you are racist. This is not good. This is not acceptable. It's not funny. I think sometimes we kind of jokingly laugh off things that are really serious, and you really we have to get out of place of doing that. That place of saying, "Oh, that was cute though." Oh, that was funny though. Like everyone thought the tiki torch thing was, oh, it was cute because it was just tiki torches until somebody died. Then it wasn't so cute anymore. So I just my call and ask for all of you is to just commit to rejecting racism. And I would say the best advice in doing that is to, one, remember that racists are incredibly insecure people. They're generally very ignorant people. Even if they're not, even, they might be educated, but they're still not, they're ignorant to society, right? They are believing something that is ultimately not true. The idea that white people are superior by their genetics is false. It is not true. So if someone says something to that effect, oh, well, white people do better in school. That's not true. I mean, like, it's fundamentally not true. Or white people I don't have any statistic in front of me to combat, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I think when you start making generalizations based on what you think or what you've been told by the media, what you've been told by Hollywood, you see oftentimes black people are portrayed as criminals, black people are portrayed as, in the lower tiers or lower rungs of society, and so you just assume that that's the reality, but it really isn't, and there's so many cases against that. This is why Black History Month exists. It exists to show you examples of how those things aren't the rule. One problem with Black History Month is that it becomes this exceptionalist thing, where you're so ready to promote the idea that we had a black president that now, oh well, everything's fixed, or everybody misquotes Martin Luther King to promote, ironically, oftentimes their bigoted ideas, or promote why there shouldn't be an effort to tear down barriers that prevent people of color from accessing resources that are really for everybody. And so I would say that would be a big part of it. Number 4, I want you to, when it comes to talking to your family members, it really doesn't have to be as blunt as an altercation or a conversation. Sometimes if somebody just makes an off-color remark, all you have to simply say is, that's not true, I don't agree with that, I don't support that. Don't sit there in silence, say something. Because what it is this person is putting out an idea to make themselves feel better. They are saying something false to convince themselves of something that they want to believe is true. They want to believe that as a white person, they have this superior intellect. They have this superior appearance. They have superior qualities. They're high quality people, whatever that means. And so you have to really be able to call it out. And don't wait until it's well into the conversation, which is why being able to recognize it is so important. Call it out as soon as you see it, and then move on. The next thing you want to do is be mindful that people who you're trying to correct on this stuff, some are going to know, some aren't going to know. That's just the reality of it. Some people actively and knowingly and willingly promote ideas that are racist in order to spread white supremacy. Some people are just caught up in this idea. They've effectively been brainwashed. And so that's why I would say the most important thing is step number 4, which is repeat. So once you commit to being a part of the solution, once you truly learn how to recognize racism, once you are comfortable and are committed to rejecting it outright, that means if there's a racist system, if there's a racist anything that's going on, remove yourself from it. Don't take any part in it. Don't contribute any value to it. Don't contribute any attention to it. Don't add any force behind it. I mean, how many people online were making jokes about the tiki torches, and just passing it off as a joke. Oh, retweeting it. Oh, this is so racist. Ha 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 ha. But it really, you're projecting it on us, and we're seeing that visual in a really painful and hurtful way. And I think the only motivation for those people to march out there with torches and swastikas is to promote fear and hatred. So when you take their message and amplify it, even if it's in a condemning way, you're essentially spreading their message and making it more profound. So you really want to be cautious and aware that you are not doing that. So number 4, you have to repeat. You have to continually do it. You have to keep telling the same people over and over again, because, like I said, the person telling these lies, the person putting this out there, is somebody who is trying to convince themselves to feel better about themselves. They feel good when they put out this bad idea. And so when you reject them, when you give them something to feel bad about, even if you just say, I disagree, that's crazy, or, that's not funny, I don't accept that. It's like that little spanking. So you don't have to go into this whole argument, and they might blow up on you, who knows? But the reality is, if somebody would have walked out of your life because you confronted them about racism, if somebody would have stopped talking to you because you called them out about racism, they would have done it anyway, whether you called them out or not. This is a person who's not particularly committed to making you better, committed to adding value to your life. So if they walk away from you because of that, you have to be, again, committed that you know what kind of society you want to be a part of. And if that person doesn't fit into that mold or doesn't fit into that span, then you have to be willing to walk away from it. So those are my tips. And I'll just end by just saying that there was one time when I had there was a showing in Atlanta at the Civil Rights Museum, the Center for Civil and Human Rights, and John Lewis was showing the movie about his life there. I want to say it was Get in the Way. I don't remember the name of this movie, I apologize. But he was taking questions afterwards, and I just kind of stood up and asked him, and I said, how do you deal with people every day who want to oppress others, who don't see the value? How do you possibly go to Congress and work with these people who you know feel a certain way about you? And he just said, he talked about how he went back to how he raised chickens as a child, and how with raising chickens, you have to be really, really patient with them because they don't really know anything. So, and I'm paraphrasing extremely, he was far more eloquent than this in his explanation, but what I took away from that was just that you have to be patient with people. Everybody's not on the same page, everybody's not the sharpest tool in the shed, and so you have to give people time to get the message on their own time. And once they learn it, hopefully it will begin to form a transition within them. Because it has to be, the choice is, racism is a choice, and those people, through what they've learned or unlearned, have to be willing also to commit to changing the choices that they make, changing their behavior. So that's what I have on that. If you have any questions, I mean, a lot of people ask that question, like, how do you talk to your family members? How do you talk to your family members? And I think you have to be in a position where you're not afraid for somebody to reject you. Because ultimately, that's what this whole thing is about. It's like people are constantly rejected by their family members because of who they love or because of what they choose to do in some aspect of their life. Your family rejects you because they don't want you to live freely, essentially, or they won't let you live freely. And so that's not good enough anymore. Like, we have to be committed to making sure that we're protecting people's rights, and that's all that's about. With that, I want to end with, of course, well, I put the little sign up. I'm using this new encoder that allows me to actually put like pictures and stuff up on the screen as we're going. And so that's why I'm able to come live, but it's also sort of a different, it's a different process than what I'm used to. So I am working on this and getting it to the point where I can more control this stuff in pace, but I hope you'll continue to join me and stick with me in this journey. I want to recognize our friends to the show. These are people who have donated in the past week. I want to thank you so much for all of your support. We cannot do the show without you. And that's Marianne N, David M, Ben W, Cathy W, Heather R, Octavia H, Kevin G, Peg K, Elizabeth C. Thank you, Elizabeth. You donate very regularly. You're the first person to donate to the show. I really, truly appreciate your support. Sheila G. Many of the people who donated this past weekend were repeat donors, and we'll talk about that. Randall W, Barry G, of course, awesome support from Barry G. Carie C, Muriel L, Andrew F. Thank you, Andrew. It was nice chatting with you. Cheryl, Sheila R, Colleen M, JF, Whitney E, Pleiades, please forgive me if I mispronounce this, M, Linnea K, Dan M, Patricia T, those are two people I didn't think last week, and I apologize, and Joann. I want to thank you all so much for supporting the show, and if you'd like to become a friend of the show, you can do so by contributing $1 or more to to www.paypal.me/jkh2. I also want to thank Strong Tree Coffee Roasters because you sent a nice, lovely package of coffee, and I'm not actually drinking it right now because I went to open the pack. I got it today in the mail, and I went to open it, and I was like, I can't actually open this before I take a good picture of it, and I had to kind of get ready to kind of go live. So I thank you so much for sending that very generous donation of coffee, which I am a complete coffee addict. I wanted to update you all about The Counter, which is the new cooking series. We are still doing this. The Counter encountered a few technical glitches and difficulties. As I discussed, I'm trying to edit and adjust like what our lighting is, how these things are being produced. Since I'm moving to 2 shows, I need to be able to manage my computing resources in a way that I can do all of it and on time and in a reliable way. And so I was a bit ambitious with the number of cameras I was trying to use to do the show, which led to some cameras malfunctioning, some cameras I just wasn't being able to pay enough close attention to. All of that is water under the bridge. I've salvaged, a lot of the files ended up being corrupted, a lot of the audio ended up being bad, just for certain malfunctions that happened because there was a lot going on in the taping. It was a wonderful taping. I was actually able to salvage a lot of the content for the show. And I don't want you to think it's gonna be like scrap content. It's gonna be a really great episode. I'm very, very excited about it, but I definitely wanna give the proper time to edit, upload it, review, add the titles, making sure I'm adding, the producer sponsors list, everyone who contributed $100 to the link. I definitely want to make sure that you're recognized and proud of this project. And so I'm going to take a little bit longer. I've rescheduled the launch of that for this Sunday at noon. And I kind of wanted it to be a Sunday show anyway, but it will launch Sunday at noon, right after AM Joy. At this same website. So you can either go to notonmywatch.tv.com or you can go to thecountertv.com and you'll be able to watch that. It's effectively going to come to the same YouTube channel until I build up a channel for just that show. So I want to thank you for being patient. Thank you for supporting that. Thank you for tuning in this evening, even though it's a little bit different. I'm going to log off. I might log back on in a couple minutes once I find my watch, because I think it's terrible to do an episode of Not on My Watch without my original Tally and Twine watch. The reason why that watch is really significant is because it's actually made by a black-owned watch company. And when I found that out, it's a really good quality watch. And I don't do sort of endorsements, like people don't send me money for me to promote their brands. But I've always, ever since I got that watch, I brought it into the show as a way of sort of putting a stamp of originality, a stamp of saying there's a way to do quality work and have opportunities for people in other segments that don't currently exist. So I'm going to log off and then maybe come back in a couple minutes with the watch on so that I can say that every episode was taped with that watch, because that would be terrible. And it's probably in the bathroom, actually. Because I put the watch on and then in fact, let me go grab it. I put my watch on, and then I took it off to put on lotion because I'm wearing short sleeves. And then I set it right here on the bathroom dresser. So that said, I am going to flaunt my watch by Tally and Twine. I'm very proud of those guys. They have a really good product. And so, in that, I'm gonna sign off. And this is James Holder, AKA Sir James II. And I'd like to ask you to relax, relate, and resist. Make sure to join us back here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. at www.notonmywatchtv.com. Thank you.